Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 350 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about funding your kids' education. Right. And all this comes from an article that I read recently that is entitled Investing in Their Kids' Future College Education Tops Some Parents' Holiday Gift List. Right. So parents are making this a priority, and rightfully so, because education is very expensive, and it's something that does typically fall on the parents, and the parents don't want to leave their children deeply in student loan debt, which, again, is very smart. So we're going to talk about what this looks like, talk about how we can fund our kids' education around the holidays and towards the end of the year, and why that may be beneficial. And then ultimately, I want you to know what the cost of college looks like, what it may look like moving forward, and exactly how much money you may need to be putting away in order to save up enough money to pay for your kids' college education. So stick around for a discussion of all of that and more in today's episode. Before we get started, though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long-form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, let me just get this out there to just start the episode. College is expensive, okay? And it doesn't really show any signs of becoming far less expensive than it is now. All right. As long as student loans exist, as long as there's the ability to borrow basically unlimited amounts of money, and for people to go into student loan debt, why would institutions not continue to just raise the price of going to school there year after year and decade after decade? Right? Now, will the increase in price be what it has been? Will the rate of change be what it has been in the past? Probably not, but that doesn't mean that there won't still be increases in price, right? So we should expect that that's the case. And if we know that college is already expensive, and now we're trying to plan for our children, how much more expensive is it going to be for them? And what's it going to look like to invest for their college? Well, we actually have to start thinking about this, okay? I think that's the big first step that everybody needs to take, is we have to think about, the prospects of, one, our kids going to college, two, how they may end up paying for college, and then three, whether or not you want your kids saddled with student loan debt, which I know I absolutely do not, and I don't think many of you do either, right? So you may need to take into account some of the things that it sounds like parents are taking into account this holiday season. So I'm going to go through this article to start, and then we'll talk about some more action-oriented things as we go through this episode, things that you can do and things that you can think about as you move forward with saving for your kids' education. All right, so this says, if you're looking for a meaningful holiday gift, consider putting money towards a child's future education costs. Nearly half of parents, 45%, may ask family and friends this year to contribute to a 529 college savings plans for their kids, according to a survey from the College Savings Foundation. Okay, now this is a strikingly large number, and I would guess that this is of people who even know what a 529 plan is. Okay, I would guess that this is a bit to the upside of what is actually real. But nonetheless, that's still quite a convincing number, and I could fall into this group, right? I've told my family, hey, if you want to put money towards my son's account for his future, for his college, then feel free to do so, right? Now that compares with 84% of parents who would welcome such contributions in lieu of traditional presents. So I guess that's where I fall in. I fall into 84% who said, hey, maybe instead of a traditional present, you put money into this account. Now, it's a smart gift said Mary Morris, CEO of Virginia 529, a state agency. And 529 programs have made it easier to do so. Now, we've talked before about how 529s, they can only be used for educational expenses, right? So they do really, hamper your ability to use the money, but they do give you tax breaks and they allow you to grow your money tax-free. So 529s are great ways to save for your kids' education. Now, there are roughly 13.5 million 529 accounts held across the country, with $464 billion in assets, according to the College Saving Plans Network. They can be used to cover higher education costs as well as private or religious school tuition through grade 12, up to $10,000 a year, student loan repayment, $10,000 lifetime maximum, and expenses related to certified apprenticeship. Okay, so these can be used for several different things as far as education goes, but they all fall into education. Assets in these state-sponsored accounts are invested and grow tax-deferred. As long as the money is used for qualified educational expenses, distributions come with no federal tax and in many cases no state tax. Generally speaking, assets are invested in age-based portfolios, which does not have to be the case. Okay, but with a lot of these 529 plans, right, they're not like traditional investment plans where you can just invest in everything or anything, right? These states, they kind of dictate what can and cannot be invested in within these 529s. But many are invested in age-based portfolios, which start off with higher stock exposure early in a child's life and then become more conservative as the college date approaches. They're much like these target date retirement funds, which do the same thing, but they do it with your retirement date, not with your age. And what do we know, right? We know, like I said earlier, college is not getting any cheaper. Okay, so for the 2021-2022 school year, students enrolled at public four-year schools can expect to pay an average of $22,690 for tuitions, fees, room, and board, according to the College Board. The average at a private college is $51,690. Okay, so I think this would be a good time for me to just step aside from the 529 talk, from saving for your kids' college, and let's talk a bit about the cost. Okay, so that said that the cost was $22,690. Now, let me be clear about something. Yes, that is a pretty accurate number from everything I can tell, but the problem with this number is that it does take into account room and board. This is, full cost. Okay. This is sending your kid to college. They live there, they eat there, all those types of things, right? Well, most of the cost, a little more than half of that cost, is typically room and board. Okay. So if you do have a four-year institution that is close to you, which most people do, four-year public institutions that are close to them geographically, living at home is actually a great option for kids. But let's just assume that your kid's not interested in that and that you're not interested in having them do so. Okay, so let's just talk about what this looks like, right? So that was that $22,690 for just a single school year, right? So that means over the course of 4 years, you're talking $90,760. So that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, right? But let's just say that we're talking about tuition and fees. Let's say that that's all we're talking about. Well, on average for 2021-2022, that was $10,338 per year, which brings us to $41,352 over the course of 4 years. So that's a drastic difference in the cost of college over that time. Now, what if you want to save for that amount? Now, obviously, saving for that amount is likely not smart because that is today. And if your child was just born, like, I just had, me and my wife just had our first child in June, right? We're not saving for today's value. We're saving for the value, 18 years from now, okay? So we have to take that into account. But let's say you were just saving up for today's value, okay? And let's say it was just that tuition and fees number, so $41,352 over a 4-year period, right? To have all that money saved by the time your kid was 18, let's say you invested making 8% per year over that 18-year period, you would have to put away $86.13 per month, and that's just for one kid, right, to go to school. So that's not insignificant. Let's say you have 3-4 kids. That becomes quite a significant number. But let us say that you want to do that same thing, but you want to do it for 18 years from now. So what I did is I took the current tuition and fees cost over 4 years, and I inflated it at 5% per year. Now, this may be a bit extreme, 5% per year, but the historical average has been about 7% per year for education, right? So I inflated it at 5% per year, and in 18 years, the $41,352 will be equivalent to $94,779.54. So that would require $197.42 per month, making 8% over 18 years in order to pay for your kid's school outright, right? That is quite the financial obligation, right? That's quite the financial need. Now, that is just for tuition and fees, okay? That is not taking into account room and board. So we move over and we say, okay, what about room and board? Well, if we just take into account today's values, right, we would have to put away $189.05, again, invested at 8% over that time period, over that 18-year time period. But again, we're not investing for today. We are investing for 18 years in the future. Okay, and if you're investing for 18 years in the future, that $90,760 for a 4-year education would become $208,023.58, right? So instead of $189 a month, you would have to put away $433.30 per month. Okay, and again, this is for one child. Okay, this is not for all of your children. This is for one child. You have 3 or 4 kids. This can become quite the financial obligation every single month. So we see that this is expensive, right? We see that it can be costly. It's doable to save up at least something for your children. Again, I want you guys to know that this is not your complete obligation to save up all money for your kids' college. You need to take care of your own retirement and get your own financial life cleaned up first. Right? And then help your children to pick cost-effective options that don't force them into student loan debt. Maybe they take some time off, they work, they save up money for themselves. Maybe they go to a 2-year school that may be free and then only spend 2 years at a 4-year institution so they don't spend as much. Maybe that's the case, right? So there are other options other than just going to a 4-year institution and doing it for a 4-year period. But that being said, this is still a big obligation, right? It's still a big thing, and we still need to know what to do. And so we need to understand, yes, this may not all be our obligation. This may not all be something that is on our back, but we want to help our kids. I know we all do. I know we want to do what's best for our children. And in the world that we live in, having a college degree, I'm not saying it's a necessity, but good luck getting some of the jobs that you want to get without it. And this is becoming less and less so in some industries. But there are many industries still where without a college degree, good luck. Okay. So that is just the fact of life. This is a big expense. It's something that as parents, we take a lot of responsibility for, and we want to save up for it, but it is a big obligation. So why not, over the holidays, why not ask if other people want to contribute, right? Instead of getting your kid another Fisher-Price toy that they're only going to, forego for the box that it came in, right? Why wouldn't you just say, hey, maybe you can get them something, grandparents, right? Maybe you can get them something for Christmas. Maybe you can get them something for Hanukkah. Maybe you can get them something for whatever holiday you have this time of year. But maybe we keep it kind of small and you put some money into the 529, or you put some money into the UTMA or the UGMA, or maybe you put some money into just a taxable brokerage account to save up money for them over a long period of time, because anything helps, right? And the more that you front load things for your kids, meaning the more money you put away in the beginning, the less costly it becomes to save up this amount of money for the future. So let's just say, and I'm not saying that, as a grandparent or as a aunt or uncle, you have this kind of money laying around or that you should put away this amount of money. But let's just look at that tuition and fees example again, all right? And let's say instead of starting with nothing, somebody front loaded, $5,000 into the kid's account, okay? They front load $5,000 into the kid's account and allow that $5,000 to grow instead of having to put away $241, instead of having to put away $197.42 per month, that value drops to $153.67. All the more if somebody front loads it with $10,000, then the value goes down to $109.93, and that is for the 18 years from now value if you inflated today's value of the tuition and fees for it. And this can also be the case if somebody put away $10,000. If we're talking about the room and board as well, right? Not just the tuition and fees. It could decrease the amount that you have to invest by, let's see, $90 a month, which is not insignificant, right? And if you can have multiple people do that, and maybe grandparents once a year or aunts and uncles once a year pitch in a little bit, it can become very, very easy to do this for your kids over time, right? You just have to be intentional. And one of the biggest things you can do is start as early as possible. Now, again, I'm going to back up and I'm going to say that if you don't have your own financial life in check, you don't have your own financial life taken care of, then don't worry about your kids' financial life when they don't yet have one. Okay, we can help our kids to have more cost-effective options later on for education and work and things like that, right? But if we don't have a retirement to live on, right? If we don't have money at the end of each month because we're just spending it all on debt payments, then ultimately we are going to become a burden to our children as we get older. Okay, and to keep them from having to deal with that huge burden, right? We clean up our own financial lives first, and then start putting money away for our children. This should be done when we get to the sixth part of the financial action plan and greater, right? If you're just in part 3 where you're getting an employer match, you should not be putting money away for your children's college, right? If you're still in debt, you should not be putting money away. If you don't have an emergency fund yet, you should not be putting money away for your kids' college. Those things are far more important, far more valuable. Now, is this unimportant? No, right? This is a very important thing, and this is something that obviously is on the mind of most parents. But put it in the proper position in your financial life, right? Think about it in a proper way. And if you do not, then you can end up doing things backwards, and your kids can be better off than you are financially, which we want our kids to be better off than we are financially. I'm not saying that's not the case, but you could save up money for your kids and then not have money in retirement to live on and become a burden for your kids, which I don't think any of us want. Now, while financial aid, grants, scholarships, and loans, they're all available to students who qualify, and you know how I feel about student loans, but grants and scholarships are welcomed, right? These are things that we need to be pushing our kids towards, even if we do have money saved for them, right? Setting aside money for future expenses can lessen the sting of the eventual price tag. And Morris, the lady that I talked about earlier, she says, even small contributions help. Most 529 plans offer a way for friends and family to give money to the account. For example, Virginia 529 allows you to make a direct contribution through its online portal and also has gift cards that can be digitally delivered and purchased at some retailers. Many other states participate in a service called UGift, where parents get a unique code that can be provided to family or friends to use it to contribute to a 529 account online, which all that is very, very neat, especially when you may come from a group that is not big when it comes to investing, doesn't know a lot about financial things, but they can know how to buy a gift card, right? And so getting a gift card for this can be pretty awesome. It's also worth checking a plan's website to see how other gifts can be made, which it definitely is. Now, while there is no federal tax deduction when it comes to 529s, there may be a state tax break depending on where you live and what plan you're investing in. Some states only allow the account owner to take the deduction for contributions, while others let non-account owners get a tax break for their gifts, okay? So that's about 529s, and I think that's a really valuable gift that you can give to those that you're close to. And all the more if you are already of means, right? All the more if you've built up this big nest egg for yourself, and let's say you've got grandchildren, right? And your grandchildren, maybe you want them to get a good start, right? And you want them to have a good education. You want them to be able to live a financially free life. What better than to have a 529 for them, or an UTMA or an UGMA or whatever, right? And put money away systematically over time for them, or just front load it if you already have a large nest egg, and front load it with a large amount and allow that amount to grow over the long term for them, right? 18 years is plenty of time to get good market returns. And you notice I assumed lower market returns than I do typically with retirement assumptions because we don't have as long, right? But 8% is still no slouch, right? It's no slouch when it comes to returns. So I do think that we should invest in a relatively aggressive way for our kids' college, but understand that that is an expense that's going to have to be paid, and we don't want to lose it, right? In the same way we don't want to lose our retirement right before we need that money, we don't want to lose our kids' college fund right before we need the money to pay for the college, right? So I think this is a big deal, okay? And I think this is something that we do need to be taking into account. But again, I think we have to be careful, okay? And the reason I say we have to be careful is because we ask people for this, right? Or we suggest that this may be a way that they can, help their grandkids out or help their niece or nephew out or whatever. And that's not a bad thing, but you need to be careful because it may come off as, hey, just give them money. And nobody really likes to hear that, right? Just give your grandkids money. I think you have to start with the end in mind with these types of conversations, right? Talk to whomever it is and say, hey, we've set up this account for little Johnny, right? Little Johnny cannot touch this money. We cannot touch this money as parents. So we're going to put this money away. You can contribute to it, and all of it is for the benefit of little Johnny. We can't do anything, funky with it. You can look into it all you want to. All these different types of things, right? Give them good assurances that this is going to be money well spent and a gift well given. Now, kids are not likely to see, first of all, they're not likely to see this gift at all, okay? Even if they, know that they got some money, they're not going to really know what's going on, especially younger kids, right? But this is literally the gift that keeps on giving, okay? This money is going to continue to grow over time. And even if the kid doesn't know that it's there, and the parents do, right, this can be a way that you stay out of student loan debt. And we know how much student loans have just, demoralized people, right? How much student loans have just kept people from being financially free over a long period of time, right? So we see that. We know that that's the case. And we want our kids to stay away from student loans. So we need to have accounts like this for them. We need to have these things in place. We know how bad that can be. And we also know that, people who have to work for things, yes, they can be very, very good in school, but it can also take a lot of time away from your ability to make good grades, to do all the right things in the classroom. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done. It definitely can be done and should be done if you do not have the proper funds set aside for your school. Working through school is 100% possible, right? But if you just want to focus on school, or you're doing some type of difficult major, you're majoring in computer science or engineering, your kid is, then you might not want them to have a full-time job while trying to do something that is very challenging like that, okay? But you might, and that's okay too, all right? Everybody's situation looks different. And I think that's important to note as well, that we don't all have the same situations in our lives, right? For some people, your kids aren't going to go to college, okay? For some of you, your kids are going to go to college and they're going to get a master's degree and they're going to get a PhD. I did, and I don't think my parents would have ever told you that I was going to have a PhD when it was all over with, but that's the path that I took, right? And different people need different money for things, right? There are kids who can, go and get a bachelor's degree and do it completely for free. They didn't need any money, right? And then there's other kids who they're, perfectly able to get a college degree, but maybe they didn't get the scholarship money that, somebody who has a higher GPA or higher test scores may have. And so they don't get the scholarship money, so they need the money to go to school, okay? There's just so many different situations that we can fall into, and we need to be thoughtful about who our children are, and we need to be thoughtful about how this money ultimately gets used. And that's one of the reasons why I have some issue with the 529, because it's just assuming that we're going to be able to use money for college expenses. Now, something that is great about 529s, and I'll plug this here because I think it is valuable, is that if your kids do get scholarships, right, then you can take out the amount equivalent to the scholarship amounts that they get. Right? So basically saying, hey, you put that money away, you were smart, you did so, but your kids don't need it, so you can take that money back. I think that's a great feature. But again, what if your kids don't go to college? And, what if your kids, don't need the money otherwise, right? Or you overinvest. I think that's one of the biggest detractors is that, I'm somebody who likes to plan and invest aggressively, right? What if I overinvest, right? What if I invest too much money? Then I'm just stuck with money in a 529 and I have to choose somebody else to give that money to. I can't use that money for myself. I can't use that money to give in a different way. It just brings up a whole number of dilemmas. But again, there are advantages to it, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all types of accounts. For instance, how we are saving for our son's college is via a taxable brokerage account through index funds. So it's low turnover. We're not paying really any taxes other than any dividends that get paid over time, and we'll just pay capital gains when we take the money out later on. But we're kicking that can down the road as far as taxes go and allowing the money to grow. And so that's perfectly fine. You can do that, right? But people would say the detractors from that would say, well, you do have to pay capital gains, and I don't have to with 529. Sure, I'm okay with that, right? Or they may say that that allows you to you could use that money for anything, and you may use your kids' money for something else. Well, I won't, but I could definitely see where somebody might be tempted to do so, right? If worse came to worse, they might be tempted to reach over and do something like that with that money that they have earmarked, right? So I understand that. Some people save in UTMAs and UGMAs, right? And UTMA and UGMA accounts are fine, but that becomes the kids' money when they become of age, and the age differs state by state, right? But that becomes the kids' money, and they can use it for whatever they would like, right? So they could use it for college, but they don't necessarily have to, right? So there are pluses and minuses, and there's also ESAs and all these different types of things. But I think the importance here is that we're actually being thoughtful. I think the importance here is that we're actually thinking about our children's futures. And I think millennial parents especially, we have felt the kick of student loans. We have felt the kick of educational costs increasing and increasing and increasing, and we don't want our kids to have to fall into the same boats that we fell into, many of us fell into, right? So we want to do the right thing by them, and I think this is admirable, but we just have to be thoughtful about how we do so. We need to have the good conversations with grandparents, aunts and uncles, people who care about your child and want to give them a gift, financial or otherwise. And we just need to be honest with ourselves as to what we need and what we actually need to do in order to put our kids in the best position possible. Look, I don't expect all of you to be doing this in, an aggressive fashion. And I don't expect all of you to, look to have your kids get, financial assets for Christmas instead of presents. I'm not suggesting that for everyone. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this isn't a bad idea. Okay, and I'm just saying that if you are in that sixth part of the financial action plan, then this is something that you need to be thinking about. You need to be setting up if you think this is a way that you want to use your money to help your children move forward. And if you don't, then that's okay too, right? This is not something that must be done, but it's something that, again, if we're going to set our children up well, then we need to do something, right? We need to help them in some way. And a lot of parents think, well, why would I do that? That's just going to make them spoiled. Well, maybe, right? I don't know. I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that. I don't know if there's a perfect rebuttal, right? I think it's all about how you raise your kids. And now, I will tell you this. If you're not at least in the sixth part of the financial action plan where you're investing at least 15% for your future, then maybe asking grandparents and aunts and uncles to chip in may be a great idea because right now you can't. Okay, so just keep these things in mind. Be thoughtful about your child's future because as much as parents don't want to think this is the case, that a lot of your child's future is in your hands. A lot of what you do for them now will impact their lives later on. And I'm sure many of you can attest to that by looking back at what your parents did for you, the sacrifices they made, and you can see that your life is different because of those sacrifices, or your life may be different because of the lack of said sacrifices. So just take this into account and think about the ways you may want to invest for your child's future this holiday season. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in Monday as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.